morning, good evening, and welcome to the Writing a Winning Workshop webinar. Thank you so much for joining in tonight. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but I, for one, am delighted to be at home and inside to do this webinar rather than a face-to-face workshop because it's wild here. Thank you so much for joining tonight. I hope we're going to have a really good webinar, and I hope that you'll go away with a few ideas on how to write your own workshop. So to make the most of this webinar, please just check out the tools that are available to you on the left-hand side of your screen. So you should have a chat box to the left-hand side where you can ask me any questions at any time, although everyone that's present will see those questions, but feel free. Okay, so over the next few minutes, we're going to look at the 7 steps that you can take to write your own winning workshop. And there will be some time at the end for questions. But of course, if you've got a question at any time during this webinar, then please click on the Q&A tool or even just the chat box and type in your question. I'll do my best to answer all of the questions that you send me over tonight. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jennifer Lindsay and I live in Blairgowrie near Perth in Scotland. I'm a learning and development consultant and I trade under the name River Park. I help entrepreneurs like you design and deliver their own workshops and training programs. So up until recently, I trained call centre agents how to handle calls and I trained lawyers how to work computers. After meeting lots of entrepreneurs and small business owners who were struggling to write their own workshops, I decided to focus on helping them. So here we are. I've displayed my social media profiles here, so please connect with me online if we are not already connected. Okay, so let's just jump right in then. Step 1 is to get clear. So before you even start thinking about what to include in your workshop, it's really, really important that you set aside some time just to think through these 3 questions. So before you even think about what you might want to say or where you might like to hold the workshop, think about who will be attending. So who would actually be there? So try and think about their background, for example. What previous experience will they have? What is their role? What is their sort of job at the moment? And why will they be there? So what is it that they're there for? Are they there purely to learn something from you? Are they there maybe to meet you as a person? Or maybe they're there just to network with other people. So it's really important to be really clear about why everyone might be attending your workshop. It's also really important to think about what they'll be learning. So you need to consider what they actually want to learn, okay? So why are they attending? What specifically is it that they're there to learn? What specifically is it that they want to be able to do as a result of attending your workshop? So when I'm talking about getting clear, I'm thinking very much from the audience's perspective. So I know that a lot of entrepreneurs perhaps design workshops and they've got lots of things that they want to say and lots of things that they want to tell everyone in order to really promote their business and to show themselves as the expert. And really all that does is sound like a sales pitch. So at all times, think about your audience and think about what's in it for them. Okay, so once you've answered those questions, you should be in a better place to start preparing for your workshop. Step 2 then is to brainstorm and write down all of your ideas. Write down absolutely anything that crosses your mind that you might want to include in your workshop. So just get a blank bit of paper, or ideally I love a flip chart, sit on the floor with lots of different coloured pens and just let your ideas run out onto the page. So write down anything at all that you want to be telling your audience. But most importantly, consider what your audience would like to hear. So remember not to get too carried away with all the good stuff that you want to tell them, and really concentrate on what your audience actually want to hear on the day. I've also put on this slide, consider how you'd like your audience to feel. So as well as brainstorming ideas of things that you want maybe to say or topics that you want to cover, think very much about how you would like your audience to feel. So do you want them to feel really motivated and inspired to go away and change something? Do you want them to go away feeling very sort of reflective and to go away just really thinking a lot about what something that you've perhaps, a seed that you've perhaps planted in their mind? So have a think about that as well while you're brainstorming all of your different ideas. And don't be scared to write down too many ideas. You can always save that flip chart for your second workshop. So don't be scared just to write everything down and just do a real brain dump on the page. It's actually really useful at that stage. Okay, probably no surprise is that step 3 is to get a great big red pen and score a lot of these ideas off. Because especially the first few workshops that you run, you probably want to cover loads and loads of pieces of information and lots of different examples and lots of different ideas for your audience. Most of the time it will be far too much, and your audience will end up just feeling really overwhelmed, as will you, because you'll need to remember and cover all of these. So it's really important to refine everything that you're going to cover during your workshop. So think really carefully about what your audience already know. And on that big bit of flip chart paper that you've got in front of you, if there's anything at all and you think actually they're already going to know all of this for definite, then cross it off. Okay. Oh, that's great, Heather. I'm glad I gave you a good idea. You'll be off to buy some flip chart paper soon. That's fab. Consider what value each item adds. Okay, so you've probably come up with lots of different ideas, some of which will not really add any value. And that comes back to, again, thinking about all the stuff that you want to say rather than the things that the audience want to hear. So it's really important to consider what value the topic or the activity might add. And if it's not going to add any value, then cross it off. Also consider your objective. So your objective should be whatever you answered back in step 1 about what the audience are there to learn. If it doesn't meet that objective, then score it off. Okay, you can always save that idea for a second or third workshop. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just means that, you know, when you're designing a workshop, it's really important to be clear and keep everything consistent with that objective. The end result, if you don't do that, is just that your audience are left feeling really quite confused, and they go away not as focused as you would like them to be, because they're trying to think of too many of the different ideas that you've planted. So this refining stage is actually really important, and don't be scared if you start off with a flip chart of, say, 100 ideas and you score off 90% of them. That's okay. And I do it all the time. Okay, step 4 is to arrange things into a logical order. So for this, I might transfer the words and phrases that I've got in my flip chart onto post-it notes, and actually physically arrange them into an order. That logical order would be, normally you start at the beginning, and work your way through. So if you're training people on some kind of process, so if you're training them on, I don't know, how to make a cake or something, you would start off by talking about the ingredients that they need to set aside, any tools that they might use, and then you would start maybe focusing on weighing and measuring before you get into the whisking everything together. You know, so try and arrange everything into a logical order, and start then to sort of think about the detail. So if I'm talking about, I don't know, baking a cake, can you tell I'm hungry? If the thing on your post-it note is thinking about the ingredients, then you want to start to detail what the ingredients are, how you're perhaps going to present that section. So just start thinking about the detail at this point. And lastly, it's really important to make sure that that logical order is actually logical to your audience. It might be really logical to you, but your audience need to understand it. So make sure that if you're giving them 3 different steps, that whatever they need to know for step 1, they will definitely already know, and that step 2 naturally leads on from that. Sometimes you might want to sort of jumble the order a little bit. So maybe if you were training your audience to bake a cake, you might actually start with the finished product so that they know what they're aiming for. So although that might feel a little bit illogical, it would make complete sense to your audience, you know, to show them the finished article first and then go right back to step 1. So, you know, the post-it note idea is really good because you can change that order as many times as you need to until it feels as if it flows. Okay, so once you've got your post-it notes in order, start to think about the methods that you're going to use and also the materials that you might need. So for each of the different sections, think about how you will deliver each section. So let me just start by saying that presenting or telling your audience is only one method. And when you're training adults, it's usually the last resort. So what I mean by that is adults learn best when they figure things out for themselves. So if there's anything at all that you can ask them to start thinking, how would I do that? Then you should be asking them the question rather than telling them the answer. If there's anything at all that you can sort of compare it to, so perhaps you're doing a workshop on social media, and you know that a lot of your audience are on Facebook, but your workshop is all about Twitter. You might want to start by asking them, you know, how would you do that on Facebook? If they know the answer there, you can usually transfer it into how they would do it on Twitter. So by using some kind of comparison, adults tend to figure things out better for themselves. Okay, so think about how you would deliver each section. So you've got options. For example, you could present like I'm doing just now. You could just talk at them. You could sort of coach them through it by asking them questions. You could demonstrate and just get them to watch. Or you could say, right, do it along with me and do a sort of walkthrough. You could split them up into pairs and get them to come up with ideas. The options are pretty much endless. You can do lots of different things. Okay, so think about how you would deliver each section, but also consider what benefit delivering it that way would bring to your audience. So don't just go for a fancy activity if all it's going to do is embarrass people. There's nothing worse than an icebreaker that involves everybody having to sing when everyone actually hates doing that. So be really mindful of how they might feel at that particular section as well. Okay. Consider what you and your audience are going to need for each section. When I'm packing up for a workshop, I will usually have my own bag or box or folder full of my materials, and I'll keep the audience's materials separate. And that just means that I'm not then faffing about in the middle of the workshop looking for something. I've got everything that I need right to hand. And I will also, at this point in my writing, I will make a list of all the materials that I might need. Okay, and I would add to that checklist as I go through each section, so that when I'm finished writing the workshop, I've got a list of all the materials that I need. I will check that list about 3 or 4 times to make sure that I've not forgotten anything. And then I will tick off every item as I pack it, usually into a suitcase or a roll-along that I will wheel to my workshop. Okay, it looks really unprofessional if you turn up and you've forgotten pens or something like that. So make sure you've got all of the materials that you might need. Once you've thought about each section and how you might deliver it, just ask yourself, so how long will your audience actually just be sitting and listening to you? As a bare minimum, you're wanting at least some kind of discussion going on at some point, okay? Ideally, you want your audience to be moving about as well at some points. So just question how long they're going to be doing the same thing and try and mix it up a wee bit so that they're not just sitting listening to you for too long. Okay, step 6 is to consider your timings. So there's no real exact science to this, other than to sort of play each of the different steps out in your mind. I would always overestimate the amount of time that you need, simply because if you tell people that you'll be there for an hour and you finish early, most people are delighted and they will fill the rest of the time networking or asking you questions, you know, or just be happy to get home early. So always overestimate the amount of time you need. Otherwise, what happens is you get to the end, which is your sort of punchline. If you're using your workshop to sell, that's normally when your pitch comes in. And at that point, if you've overrun, then everyone's getting their coats on, or they're running out the door, or they're packing up already, and they've stopped listening to you ages ago. So always overestimate the amount of time that you need. Always allow more time for the really important sections. So when I was developing this training, I allowed a wee bit more time talking about the methods and materials, because to me, that's one of the most important sections of this, is to think about the different methods that you're going to use. So, you know, allow a wee bit more time for the things that are really important. Also allow a little bit extra time at the start and at the end of your workshop. So allow extra time at the start because you probably want to do some kind of introductions or icebreaker, and no matter, especially if it's a room full of women and you ask them to introduce themselves, even if you say, can you introduce yourself just by saying your first name, the name of your town and the name of your business, they will talk longer. Most people will talk longer than you've asked them to. So allow extra time for all of that. You'll also want a little bit of a settling in period where people are finding their seats and looking for pens and all the rest of it. So allow them to do that. That is all part of them becoming comfortable in the workshop. And when people are more comfortable and relaxed and you know, more comfortable, they're feeling more confident, you're more likely to get an interactive workshop. So allow that little bit of extra time for people to settle down, introduce themselves and ask any sort of burning questions they have, like when's the tea break, you know, and things like that. Also allow plenty of time at the end of your workshop. Now I would always recommend that you invite questions throughout your workshop, because generally speaking, adults will learn better if they can interact with you and if they can ask questions as they go, and as ideas pop into their head, it will make so much more sense. I do understand, however, that sometimes that knocks you off course, and so you will probably want to just save all the questions for the end. Either way is fine, but in any case, allow a little bit extra time at the end, because people will generally have questions at the end as well, even if they've been asking them all the way through. And again, at the end, you want people to be able to gather all their stuff together, perhaps chat to the person beside them, and it just gives you that wee bit of a buffer, just in case anything else overruns a wee bit. So allow extra time at the beginning and at the end, and for anything that's really, really important. Okay, step 7 then, the last step, is to review what you've written so far. So review your plan. So I will pretty much always stop at that point and leave it for a day, or sometimes even longer, and try not to think about it, so that when I come back and look at my plan for the workshop, it's with fresh eyes. And I will really just sort of sense check everything and just keep asking myself, so if I was the audience, would this make sense? If I was in the audience, would I be learning what I had signed up for? If I was the audience, would I be sitting still for too long listening, or would I be interacting? Check that the workshop flows, so check that the order that you've arranged all your post-it notes in actually makes sense, and that it flows a wee bit. There is nothing worse, and it's really unprofessional, to say, okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is this, and then completely unrelated, the next thing I'm going to talk about is something else. Try and make it flow, and make each of your different sections sort of link together, and that way it will feel much more natural to you and also to your audience. One of the last questions that I always ask myself is, in all honesty, if I was in the audience, would I actually enjoy this experience? I would assume that one of your own personal objectives before you deliver any workshop is for them to go away happy, having enjoyed their time. So always ask that question. It might sound obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people obviously don't ask that. So really think, would they enjoy it? And think about the basics. So will they have tea and coffee, water? Will there be any sweeties on the table? All of these things just add to the enjoyment. Will they be sitting listening? Will they be able to interact? Will they meet anyone else? What will they actually get from you? And what will they be able to go away and do? So if you've ticked all of those boxes, then your audience should be having fun. And then the rest of it is just down to you to present what you've prepared in as natural a way as you possibly can. And your audience will end up saying that, yes, they have really enjoyed it, because they'll have gone away and actually learnt something, rather than just sitting in a presentation listening to how wonderful your business is. They might say they've enjoyed that, they might have enjoyed meeting you, but the impression, if they actually go away learning something, the impression will last a whole lot longer, and they're more likely to tell other people about it then. Okay, so just to recap then, when you're writing a workshop, these are the 7 easy steps to write your winning workshop. So step 1 was to get clear. So that meant asking yourself a few questions, mainly around who will be there, why they're attending, and what they will want to achieve. So also ask yourself what you want to achieve, but more importantly, what do they want to achieve? Step 2 is to really sort of brainstorm lots of different ideas about what you want to include, what kind of activities you want, how you want your audience to feel, perhaps even brainstorm what you want them to say afterwards, because that helps you just think about how to put all of this together. Step 3 is to get out your big red pen and score a lot of these ideas off. or save them for another day. Refine your selection by concentrating on what your objective was back in step 1. Okay, step 4 is to arrange them into a logical order. Step 5, think about how you're going to deliver each section and what materials you and your audience are going to need, and try and come up with a mixture of different methods. Step 6 is to consider the timings for each section, so always slightly overestimate and allow a wee bit more time at the beginning and end. And then finally, step 7 is to review all of that and make sure that you've got the bones of a really good, interactive, logical, clear, focused workshop that your audience will love. Okay, so just shortly we'll have a question and answer session. But before then, I just wanted to mention that on my website, I've created a free resources area where you'll find actually a workbook that will help you when writing a winning workshop. So all of the 7 steps that I've outlined in this webinar are contained in that workbook, and there's space in the workbook for you to jot down your ideas. There's also a personal development plan that you can use, and there's some ideas on how to promote your workshops, and my favourite tools for learning as well. And I'll be adding to that over the next few weeks. So there's a free resources area of the website. So I'm going to try and show you where that is. So if I press a few buttons, you should be able to see how to access that resource centre. So it's completely free. Just pop in your email address and you'll get access to all these resources. You'll be able to set up a password so that you can dip in and out as often as you like. And as I said, I will be adding to that over the next few weeks. Okay, so let's do some questions and answers. So on your left-hand side of your screen, you should see some tools. So there is a chat box and also a question and answer box. So let me just check that both of those are enabled. Yep. So please just type in any questions or comments or queries that you have about anything that we've covered tonight, and I will do my best to answer them. Now, I know that a few people have been emailing me saying that they didn't manage to get home in time because of the really bad weather. So there are a few people that haven't made the live session, but I will be emailing out a link to the replay. So that probably means that our Q&A session has been cut short. So I'll hold off for a couple of minutes to see if anyone has any questions before we sign off. Don't think there are any questions so far. So I tell you what then, since most of you will be joining us on the replay rather than this live event, please feel free to email me any questions that you have. You can tweet me or Facebook me or LinkedIn me or just plain old-fashioned email me. Okay, here's the first question. Do you rehearse your workshop? Thanks, Heather. Not so much. I tend to, if I'm rehearsing anything, I will rehearse the first couple of sentences. Sometimes I will even go as far as sort of typing a script for the first couple of sentences. And by that, I mean hi, my name's Jennifer, welcome to tonight's webinar. Just really to give me that confidence boost so that I know exactly how I'm going to open. And then the rest of it, it's not as if I wing that at all. I know what I'm going to include in each section, but I don't say it out loud until the actual workshop, because I feel that it just makes it flow a bit better and it makes it a little bit more natural. Heather, you've been to one of my workshops before, so they tend to be more driven by the audience rather than myself. So this is the least interactive thing I have ever done as a trainer, is this webinar. So normally it would be constant questions and answers and discussions with the audience. So that's pretty much impossible to rehearse. So short answer, no, I don't really. I hope that answered your question. Does anyone else have any other questions for just now? As I say, otherwise what we will do is I will just recommend that you get in touch via email or on any of these social media platforms and ask me your question, because I would be delighted to help. Okay, so thank you very much for joining. I hope that was of some use to you. I would also like to ask you a huge favour and send me a wee email or tweet with your thoughts about with your feedback on how this webinar went for you. Anything that you liked about it, anything that didn't work too well, I would love to hear. So thank you very much and good night.